guys, welcome back. Stephanie here. Today I'm going to show you another bread recipe. However, this one is only going to take a few hours. The other artisan bread Dutch oven recipe that I showed you before, that one took 18 to 24 hours just to rise and then bake after. So this one, if you want homemade bread in the same exact day, or maybe even for lunch or dinner, you can do it within under 3 hours. The prep time, 5-10 minutes, and then let it rise for 2 hours. Then we're going to pop it in a 450-degree oven for 30 minutes in our Dutch oven. Take the lid off and let it bake again for about 10 to 15 minutes to get that nice golden brown crust on it. So we're going to do that today, but in the meantime, while the dough is rising for the 2 hours, I'm going to show you how I make my homemade butter. And I'm going to do 3 different types of homemade butter. So we'll get into that as well during our break time. I do have to let you guys in on something. So the other day I did this whole thing for you guys, and my microphone I didn't know was not working. So I went to go play it back, and all you could see was this. For 30 minutes. And I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I couldn't use it. I couldn't use it. So I called Buddy and I was so upset, and he was like, but at least you have homemade bread and homemade butter. And I was like, you're right. Silver lining, I got to eat a lot of bread that day. So we're going to do it again, and I'm not complaining about it. But lesson learned about my mic, because I have it clipped on here so that I know I'm soft-spoken. I know I'm not very loud to my phone, so I got this mic to help with the volume issue. But the key is the mic has to work. And I did test it out to make sure that I'll be testing it out throughout the video to make sure my volume is still on. So let's get into it. This recipe, we're going to do start with 1.5 cups warm water. Warm, you need it in between like 105 to 115, no more than 115, because then you're going to kill your yeast. But just think of like hot tub temperature type water. So get that, 1.5 cups. Then we're going to add in 1/2 tablespoon of table salt, or you could do a full tablespoon of flaky salt, like kosher salt that's bigger grained. And then we're going to do 1 packet of our active dry yeast. This is the Red Star Active Dry Natural Yeast. We're going to do a whole packet, and we're going to mix all that in together into the water mixture. So let's do that now. So I've got my 1.5 cups water. My 1 packet of my yeast. And then let me get my salt. I'm going to do 1/2 tablespoon salt. I'm going to mix this together. So the purpose of letting your dough rise for longer, it really all kind of depends on, well, the bread you're making, but we're making the same type of bread. It's an artisan type white bread loaf that goes in your Dutch oven. The longer you let it rise, it allows the bread to have a richer taste. So the gluten really has time to develop. You get a more yeastier tasting bread. Not to say that this 2-hour rise and immediate bake is a bland bread by any means. It's still very tasty. Really though, if you were to put like a blindfold on and cut a piece of the 18-hour rise bread and this 2-hour rise bread and tell me which one was which, I think you might have a hard time, unless you're just like a super bread connoisseur, if that's a thing. Okay, I've got this mixed together, and now I'm going to do 3 1/4 cups flour. I like using bread flour. I think it gives it a chewier texture, but you can use all-purpose flour for this recipe as well. Either one will work. Just kind of depends on you. So I'm going to use my King Arthur unbleached bread flour. That's what I'm using today. And I say 3 1/4 cups, but you may just want to add in 3 cups first and just see the consistency of the dough. You want it shaggy and wet. You don't want it to form like a smooth elastic ball. You don't want that. You want it to still be kind of wet and shaggy looking, and I'll show you what I mean. So sometimes, depending on your measurements or your flour, if it's super packed in there, you may only need 3 cups. Let me get to the bottom of the barrel on this one. I'm going to do one more of this flour here. I took a picture at the grocery store yesterday of some of these butters that I'm going to show you how to make today. And the cost of them, it's pretty crazy to me. Just the money you could save doing it yourself. Okay, I'm going to mix this. This was just 3 cups. I'm going to mix this in. And if it's too wet, I'll add in that extra 1/4 cup. Or if it's just right, I will leave it out. I was supposed to have work this afternoon. I was supposed to go to a listing appointment, which in real estate world just means that you're going over to a potential client's house to take a look at their property, kind of give them an idea of what they could sell it for, what improvements they need to make to it before they put their house on the market. Between this economy and the weather, I don't know if I'm ever going to work again. I got canceled because of the weather. It's storming again today. So I think 3 cups of flour is enough, but I actually am going to add in a little bit more water because this dough is still slightly dry, too dry for me. So just maybe a tablespoon of warm water. Just a little. The last bread I made, I transferred the dough into a oiled, clean bowl. I'm not going to do that with this one. I'm just going to scrape down the sides, make sure it's all incorporated, and I'm just going to let it sit and rise in the same bowl that I just made the dough in. So, and this looks good to me. So this time around, I just needed 3 cups of flour and about 1.5 cups of warm water, and I added maybe just a tablespoon more just to get it to the consistency that I want. And I'll show you that right now. So kind of similar to the other dough, I want it wet and shaggy where it kind of sticks to your fingers a little bit, nothing that you could like shape and form yet. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put a damp towel on top. I'm going to dampen a towel, put it on top, and I'm going to let it rest in a warm area. So right now I just put my oven to warm, and I'm going to put it on top of my oven so that the kind of radiant heat from my warming oven is going to help this rise. So it's cold outside. So depending on where your climate is, if it's super cold, you may need to help it out to get a little bit of a warmer, humid area to rise. So let's do that. Let's set this aside. I'm going to clean this up, and then we're going to come back and make homemade butters, 3 different kinds. Welcome to the other side of my kitchen. So I need to be over here by a plug because what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat. I'm going to take my heavy whipping cream that I got from Kroger. This is a quart. I'm not going to use the whole quart. I'll probably use a half for demonstration purposes because I don't need that much butter. Plus, I already have a lot of butter from the other day. but I'm gonna use this, and you can put this in a mason jar and just shake it forever, and it will separate and it will turn into butter. But I'm going to do the fast method and use my food processor and just turn this on for a few minutes, and it's going to turn it into butter. It's going to turn the it's going to separate and have buttermilk on one. You'll have the liquids and then you'll have the solids, and I'll show you what to do with the liquids and solids once we're done. Okay. So if you've never worked with heavy whipping cream before it gets to the butter stage, it actually is whipped cream, like the name of the milk. So it's going to come out super thick. Obviously, it's not whipped cream just yet, but I'll show you the stage it gets to as whipped cream, because that's the stage right before butter. Okay, so I'm just going to turn it on. I only have two options, well, three: pulse, off, and on, and I'm just going to turn it on and let it run. Okay, we are now 3.5 minutes in, and we are pretty much at whipped cream stage. So here you could add in powdered sugar to make an icing. This is, how you make icing with, you add in powdered sugar, and you ice a cake with it, or just leave it as whipped cream. You have to add in butter as well to make icing, like a buttercream type icing. But this is just very versatile whipped cream. It doesn't taste like anything, it tastes like milk. So we're going to keep going, and depending on how much you have, it's going to depend on how quickly it turns. So with the amount I have right now, we're at 3.5 minutes, and we're at whipped cream. Okay, I tried to let you guys see, oh my gosh. When the butter was finally starting to separate from the buttermilk, you will notice that the buttermilk will start to splash all over your lid and come out the top if you don't have this on. So that's when you know that stuff is actually happening. So I'm going to keep it going. All right, take this out. And from here on out, we can go back to the other side so I have more working space, and I'll show you what we're going to do. All right, so now that we've got our butter separated in the whipping cream, we are going to put this into a fine mesh strainer over a bowl, because what's left over of the liquid is actually buttermilk. I have some from the other day when I made bread, or not bread, but when I made bread and butter, I kept the buttermilk so that I could use this again for biscuits or pancakes or whatever calls for buttermilk. So just keep whatever's left over. So let's go ahead and strain this now. And some of you probably have made homemade butter before, and you could probably comment about this, but I just feel like there's nothing like fresh homemade butter. And even with like fresh cow's milk, it's just got to be even creamier, richer, full of flavor. When I make butter like this, it just has such a, almost like a velvety texture, a smoother texture, a cleaner taste to it, in my opinion. I'm going to just push this glob of butter down, and just work it through this strainer. Not through it. I don't want to push all the butter through the strainer, but what I want it to happen is I want all these little pockets that have buttermilk still in them to come out, because I want the butter I just want butter left over. I don't want any buttermilk in it, because as you know, buttermilk itself can have like a sour smell to it, and we don't want any of that in our actual butter. We just want creamy butter. And all in all, it took me about 10 minutes, like start to finish, to process this butter in my food processor. So, and depending on how much or how little you have in there, it'll go by quicker or slower. And when we're done with this step, we're going to put it in an ice bath. I have a bowl of ice water right here. It's got ice cubes and water in it. And we are going to plop this ball of butter down into the ice bath and form it. It's going to solidify. It's going to get harder. We're going to clean off the extra buttermilk from the butter. I know you're like, you're going to wash your butter? What is that about? Yes, you're going to wash it. You're going to wash your butter in ice water. I've just been working this butter through this strainer, letting the buttermilk separate from it. And then I'm going to put this buttermilk into a mason jar and keep it in my fridge so that I can use it for baking later. Or you can freeze it. Freeze your buttermilk if you're not going to use it right away. That way you still have it for future use. Just remember to thaw it. That's my problem. The reason why I like powdered buttermilk, if you don't know what that is, go to my buttermilk biscuits done a different way video, because I have a powdered buttermilk that I use because when I buy buttermilk by the quart, I never use it all. And then if I freeze the rest, I forget to thaw it when I want to use it, and then to defrost it and everything, I just feel like it's a hassle. So the powdered buttermilk is awesome, but if you're doing butter and you have actual buttermilk left over, then just use it right away, or within the next few days, or just freeze it if you'll remember to thaw it. So I've got this big thing of butter, and I'm going to plop it down into my ice bath. I just put my buttermilk in my jar. There's a few butter clumps in it, and that's fine with me. I probably have about 1.5 cups of buttermilk. Not bad. Show you what we're going to do now. We're going to get a little messy. So here I've got my butter in a bowl of water, and I'm just going to basically squeeze it. And if you'll notice, the water is going to turn cloudy. That's basically the buttermilk coming off of the butter. I'm just kind of washing it, squeezing it out. And the reason why we want it to be ice water is because we want it to solidify, because right now it's going to be pretty soft. So the ice water really helps it to harden while we rinse it. Okay, I'm pretty happy with this. So I'm just going to set this aside, rinse off my hands, and I'll be right back. So we have our butter done. We have washed it off of all of the buttermilk. So the purpose again for washing your butter is to get the buttermilk out as much as possible. And what it does is it just preserves it longer, because buttermilk goes rancid quicker. So we want to make sure that this has been cleaned of any buttermilk and it's just a solid mass of butter. It's pretty white. There's not a whole lot of yellow to it. So what we're going to do now is, this is kind of just an unsalted, plain tasting butter. You could use it right now just as is. It's butter. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make 3 different butters that I'm going to save and use on different breads, or for my kids on toast, whatever it may be. These are super simple, and they sell these in the store, and they're expensive, and I just don't, it blows my mind. So I'm going to divide this into 3, because I'm going to make 3 different ones. I'm just going to make like a peace sign, I guess. Try to make it even. It's probably not even. It almost looks like mozzarella. It looks like mozzarella cheese. So I'm going to just put these in my kids' little snack bowls because it's going to make it easier to mix. But the first one I'm going to do is just a salted butter. I like salted butter on like biscuits or for even cooking or whatever you want to use salted butter for. I'm going to do a plain salted butter. So I'm going to get this and some salt. You can use kosher salt, flaky salt, table salt. I'm just going to sprinkle some table salt in here. Just like a pinch or two. And I'm just going to take a spoon. I'm going to mix it, kind of fold it in on itself so it's all well incorporated. And then just taste it. Just see, you know, a little bit and just see if you need to add more or less. That's good. That's a good amount of salt for me. A slight salt taste. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take my mason jar. And I'm just going to kind of form it into like a little bit of a ball as best I can. Scrape all the sides. There you have it. One of your butters. So I'm going to use the same bowl because it was a salted butter, and I'm going to do the next one in here. This one's going to be an herb butter, which the other day when I made this butter, and I forgot to turn my audio on or whatever, I coated the sides of my homemade bread. Like I sliced up 2 pieces and I coated it with the herb butter and I put it down in a pan. And I made a turkey grilled cheese with the homemade bread and the garlic herb butter as the butter on the bread. Next level grilled cheese. I'm not even kidding you. It was the best grilled cheese that I've ever had, I think. And I made the butter in the bread. So, okay. So our next little section here, let's add in a little bit of salt. And here I'm adding in actual like minced garlic from this jar. I'm just going to do like a little, probably half a teaspoon or so. I mean, add it, you know what? I think I'm going to go big. I'm going to do a full teaspoon. We love garlic here. So I added some of that. And then I'm going to chop up some herbs, some dried herbs. I've got some basil left over from our garden last year that I dried out. Let me just move this butter over a little bit. So I've got basil, some rosemary that I dried. The reason why you want to chop this is because rosemary can be kind of, I don't know, stick-like. And so you don't want just big sticks in your butter. You could probably just crush up with your hands the other, the basil and the parsley. I'm going to add parsley too to this mix. So I've got basil, rosemary, garlic, parsley. And I'm just going to chop this up. I'm actually going to move this butter over to this bowl so I don't get herbs in it. There we go. Okay, so I've got them chopped very finely on my cutting board, and I'll just kind of try to show you. Got those chopped, and I'm going to just put them into my butter bowl here. And again, I'm just going to kind of fold it in on itself. Now, you do not have to use this minced garlic. Like I said, you can use like garlic powder, garlic salt. Leave out the table salt since you're using garlic salt because it might be too salty. But just add whatever you like. I like the garlic bits in it, especially when I made that grilled cheese on the bread. It like toasted the garlic on the bread and it was just next level. Amazing. So that's what mine turned out to be, an herb butter, garlic herb butter. And the last one, I'm going to get a clean bowl because I'm going to do a sweet butter. So let me get a clean spoon. My last butter I'm going to do is a sweet butter. I already have a little jar that I have set aside. It's cinnamon sugar because my kids really like butter and toast with a sprinkle of cinnamon sugar on it. I remember my mom used to make that for me after school all the time. So we're just going to make a butter with cinnamon sugar in it. You can add cinnamon. You could do brown sugar. You could do a little bit of cocoa powder and mix it in with some sugar to make more of like a chocolatey taste to it. You can really dress this sweet butter up and just, you could add powdered sugar, you know, go crazy. But right now I'm just going to do a cinnamon sugar butter. And I'm just going to sprinkle some on here. Maybe like a tablespoon. Oh, a little bit more. You know who also likes cinnamon sugar butter? Brienne. She absolutely loves it. I can remember on Sunday dinners when she was like, I don't know, she was a little kid. But she would be in the kitchen. We'd have like cornbread or something or rolls, and she'd be in there with her own little butter, just mixing up her own cinnamon sugar butter. I bet she does that for her kids now too. All right, guys, that is it for the butter. Like, look at it. Cow. Salted regular butter, a cinnamon sugar butter, and then your garlic herb butter. And I found these really cute tops the other day at the grocery store. These are from Ball. They're not for canning. These are just for sealing. So if you've got something like this that can just go in the refrigerator and you're not trying to preserve anything in these cans or in these jars, then these little cute little wooden top jars are perfect for something like this. And you just pop them on. How cute is that? So there you go. All your butters. Stack them in your fridge, and I'm going to put these in the fridge, and then we are going to come back in a little bit when the bread is done. I've got about 25 more minutes of my 2-hour wait time to let it rise, and then I'm going to put it in my 450 degree preheated oven. Now remember, you need to put your Dutch oven in the oven when it's preheating. You want your Dutch oven hot. So it'll help the bottom crisp up and it'll just help the bread develop and rise. So when your oven is, I'll probably start preheating it here in about 10 minutes. So I'll preheat the oven to 450, put my Dutch oven in there. And then once you're 2 hours up, you're going to transfer your dough into your Dutch oven with a piece of parchment paper. Cook it for 30 minutes. Take it out, take the lid off, and then bake it again for about 10 to 15 more minutes. So I'll catch you in a little bit. We have our very hot Dutch oven that has been preheating in the oven at 450 degrees. Let me get this out of the way. What we're going to do now is that this has been rising for 2 hours. I'm going to lightly flour my surface here, my clean surface. This is what it looks like after it's been sitting for 2 hours. Smells like bread. Okay, now that it's on my floured surface, I'm just going to start to bring together the edges and kind of fold it in on itself a little bit because what I want to do is I want to kind of create a dough ball that's manageable. I'm not going to knead it really, just kind of pulling in edges, tucking it in the middle, pulling it from the side, tucking it in. It's pretty sticky, but as you work it, it's kind of collecting the flour from this countertop. It helps to form dough ball there. Okay, so I've got my nice rounded dough right here. I'm going to wash my hands off, and then I'm going to stick my parchment paper down into my pot, and I'm going to lift up this dough and set it inside. Be extra careful when you put this in your pot because it's going to be hot. So I just, and the reason why I use parchment paper in my Dutch oven for bread making is it just makes it easier to bring the bread out. And it's also like a non-stick surface. So if you did have any wet sticky dough areas on the bottom and you don't want burnt on the bottom of your pot, it's just more manageable to work with the dough this way. So I'm going to pick this up and put it in my pot. All right, and now I'm going to score the top of my bread. I'm just going to add a little bit of flour on top, and I'm going to score it with a sharp knife. There are some tools specifically for bread making, like little razor blades that you can make designs. So it's just going to help the bread be able to expand and rise easier when it's cooking. Just make sure whatever you're using is nice and sharp. Okay. So I'm going to put the lid on. Pop this guy in the oven for 30 minutes. But I would really appreciate it if you guys would like this video, comment. I read all of them. If you would share it with someone who maybe enjoys baking or learning new things like this, becoming more self-sustainable. Yeah, just helping us get the page out to everyone that we can so that I can continue to do these things and buy stuff like microphones and really keep up all the content that we want to share with you all. I have so much more to share. I can't wait to show you my food wraps, my beeswax food wraps and beard balms and deodorants and all that. But this really helps you guys helping me by sharing and liking and commenting, and all of that really helps me grow my page so that we can continue to do this. So bread's baking, I can smell it, and I can't wait to share it with you guys. So see you in a little bit. Oh yeah. It's looking perfect. Check it out. So we're going to put it in the oven for about 10 more minutes. I'm going to check it, and if I like the way it looks, I'm going to take it out. 2-hour rise time, 40-minute cook time. Guys. Oh yeah. I've got my cooling rack out. Just check it out. I really can't tell a huge difference in like the 2-day rise versus this one. I mean, it looks the same, it smells the same. It might taste different, you know, as far as the yeastiness in the bread, but yeah. So if you want bread same day, go for this recipe. It works, it's good. You've got your 3 different butters you can choose from. I think today I'm going to do maybe some cinnamon and sugar with a little bit of honey from my bees. think that's what we're going to do this afternoon. Well, my phone died and I was trying to explain something, but that's okay because while it was charging back up a little bit, gave my bread some time to cool down so I can actually cut it so you can see the inside. But what I was trying to tell you earlier was that if you check out my YouTube shorts, I will explain how I made this homemade mayonnaise. So in my shorts, I will just, it's a 1-minute video, but this mayonnaise is homemade with just a few simple ingredients from home. And so you could do a chicken salad or just put it on a club, egg salad sandwiches, tuna sandwich, whatever. But with your fresh bread, your homemade mayonnaise, or skip all that and do your butters. I'm going to do my cinnamon sugar butter with a little bit of honey. But let's cut it open and just take a look at it. Super soft. I'm using a bread knife to get through the bottom because it's kind of, check it out. Doesn't that look good? So the way I store my bread, you can put it in like a paper bag or whatever, but honestly, just like that, cut side down on a cutting board, it will keep the inside moist. And my bread doesn't really last any more than 3 days around here anyway. So I just set it like that on my counter and then cut off a piece and set it back down flat, and it just keeps the moisture inside the bread. But I am going to make myself a little piece now, a warm piece of bread with that butter. A little bit of honey. Oh yeah. Soft, chewy in the middle. The crust on the outside is perfect. You guys got to try this bread. Same day. Dutch oven bread. And this butter, to die for. Again, I hope you subscribe and like and share if you know anyone who would also find value in this information. I know I love doing it, so I love to share it, and I would love it if you would share it too. Talk to y'all later.